a life well lived means enjoying every moment, staying curious, always learning, and being kind to other people. And I think that if we had more people in the world that were kind to each other, the world would be such a better place. So for me, that's really the heart of it, is to live life being kind.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reflections on Living Well podcast, where we explore perspectives on the good life in the 21st century. I am your host, Broderick. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reflections on Living Well podcast. Today, our guest is Sky Bergman. Sky, Professor Emeritus of Photography and Video at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, is in her third act after a 30-year teaching career. Her artwork is in prestigious museum collections, and her commercial work has appeared in renowned magazines like the Smithsonian. Sky's passion is creating films and projects that inspire intergenerational connections, emphasizing the power of shared stories. Following her successful PBS documentary, Lives Well Lived, her book, Lives Well Lived, Generations, distills wisdom from the film, celebrating life's essence across generations. Hi, Sky.
Hey, how are you doing?
Great. I am excellent. Just got off a very lovely weekend of capoeira, this Brazilian dance martial art I do. So I'm like feeling really good right now.
That's good.
And I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I got to know Sky briefly. We spoke once before this interview, but through Sky's documentary, Lives Well Lived, it's just beautiful. I'm going to say this probably many times here on this podcast. I really encourage you all to please check out this documentary. It's just it's excellent. We need more of it. And I encourage you all to go out and support it. And I'm hopefully I'll say this again throughout this this conversation. And Sky she didn't encourage me to do this. I'm doing this out of just pure love for this documentary. And so I reached out to Sky and asked her to be on this podcast, and I was happily surprised that she responded. I have reached out to lots of people to be on this podcast, even people I know who have not responded. Very interesting. Maybe because it's in the beginning. But I'm really appreciate you being open to coming here and sharing your personal philosophy and wisdom on a life worthy of living, or a life well lived, what that possibility can look like. And I'm sure in this conversation that, you created a documentary, a book, really exploring this theme with elders. And that's an important piece of the puzzle for me as well, is I generally like to talk with people who are elders. And I think there's lots of wisdom there that we can learn and glean from. So, all right, I know I've said a lot there, but I just wanted to shine the light on the documentary. It was that powerful and valuable for me. And also just appreciate you for being open to coming onto this podcast in its early phases to have this conversation with me. And I really do think this work that you're doing is super, super important. And I'm very grateful that you're willing to come here to share some of those insights that you've gained throughout that.
Yeah, well,
This
thank you very
process.
much for having me.
Yeah. So, the way this thing works, I introduce you here, and I ask you to introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into what living well means from there.
Yeah, sure. Well, again, thank you for having me. It's really great to be on your podcast, especially given that our names of what we're doing are so similar, right?
Yep.
Living well, lives well lived. So just I'm glad to have the opportunity. And I guess a little bit about me is that I spent 30 years as an educator, a professor of photography at the university here in San Luis Obispo. And I was looking at approaching 50 and looking for positive role models of aging and just not finding them out there in the media. Everything that I was seeing were all the things to avoid aging, all the anti-aging creams and all the negative stereotypes of aging were what I was seeing in the movies and on TV. And in my own family, I had this amazing, incredible role model of my grandmother who was about to turn 100, who was still working out at the gym. And she didn't start working out until she was 80. So she proved to me that it was never too late to start something new. And it got me thinking that I needed to find other people out there like my grandmother who were older adults who were living full and meaningful lives. And I set on a quest to do that, not knowing I was going to make a film, and spent 4 years interviewing 40 people aged 75 and above with a collective life experience of 3,000 years. And little did I know that it was going to end up as a film on PBS, sparking all this intergenerational projects that we've been doing. It's pretty amazing where it's gone.
That's awesome. That's just awesome. Yeah. Again, I love it. I'm a fan.
Thank you.
I really am. It really touched me a lot. Your grandmother too. She's just precious.
Yeah.
She was precious. Yeah. So go look at it, folks. So with that in mind, we say a little bit about you. I'm sure I would think at least a little bit more about you, your life story will unfold throughout this conversation. But let's start here. What does living well mean to you, or what does a life well lived mean to you, or these different ways of saying this, the good life or a life worthy of
Yeah.
living? So what does that mean to
Well,
you?
I would say that for me, I will pick a bit of from my grandmother, which was she always lived her life being kind to other people. And so for me, a life well lived means enjoying every moment, staying curious, always learning, and being kind to other people. And I think that if we had more people in the world that were kind to each other, the world would be such a better place. So for me, that's really the heart of it, is to live life being kind.
Hmm. That's beautiful. I see your grandmother said that in the documentary, and yeah, being kind. I love how your how you introduced living well. It wasn't just centered around you. It was centered around how can I treat others? How
Hmm.
do I relate to others? It's such a right from the beginning, relationships is an important piece of the puzzle for living well to you. So, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Why should we be kind to another person? Why should we be kind to others? Why would that make our lives better or worthy of living?
Well, I think that, whenever you're kind to someone else, you're giving back in some way. And I think that I always at least feel better when I do something for another human being. I mean, it just warms my heart to be able to give back in some way. So I can't speak for everyone else. I can just speak for me. And I think, we live in a world where there's so much that's thrown out at us, and whatever we can do to make the world a little bit easier, kinder, gentler for our fellow humanity, I think we should be doing that instead of fighting, like give peace a chance. I think we need more of that, especially right now in this particular moment. It feels like we are so divisive. And what would happen if we learned to put our differences aside and really just listen to each other, really hear each other, and to try and being kind comes in so many different shapes and sizes. Being kind can just be listening to somebody. It doesn't have to be doing something. There's just so many ways that we can be kind to each other, even as small a thing as saying thank you to somebody and holding a door open for somebody. Those little random acts of kindness go a long way. And I can assure you that when you do something like that, it puts a smile on the other person's face as well. And they pay it forward. I mean, it's a domino effect. And um, I see us in a world right now where we kind of have forgotten a little bit how to be kind to each other. And I know even when I am at a stop sign, I wave somebody on and they like are kind of startled and then wave back, and I can see the smile emerge because we've kind of forgotten those small things. It doesn't have to be big acts, but those small acts of kindness that if we really consciously think about doing that every day and every moment, what a difference that can make over time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, that emphasis on the other. Yes, it does makes us feel good. It puts a smile on our face when we do something kind. There's
Hmm.
There's an impact on our nervous system and, our psychological state when we do that, and that is healthy for us. But you keep
Sure.
coming back to, how does it affect others, and how putting a smile on someone else's face is a good life. Putting recognizing that we have something in common here. We have in this world of relationships. Um, there's almost like an interdependency. We depend on each other. Well, there is. I think there is an interdependency in the world. We
Absolutely.
we need each other, and those small acts of kindness. You don't know how far that can take a person.
Hmm.
You don't know how far that's going to. Even if you look at it from a selfish perspective, that can come back around to you. You don't even know. Even on the road, you're saying hi to someone and they, for a moment, they smile, and maybe they're having road rage, or they have a potential for road rage, or maybe it helps prevent that. And further down the road, there's an accident, and you end up being a part of that accident because someone was upset and angry, and that act of kindness may have prevented that. I know it's a random example, folks, but I'm just saying how we don't know how the impact of that, or the impact of how that's going to influence that person's interaction with their family, with
Hmm.
other human beings. Maybe that little smile, that little act of kindness to them. Maybe they were in a situation where they felt like the world is just a mess, and humans are just unkind, mean creatures. And excuse me, and that act of kindness, that moment of kindness, gave them a little reprieve from the wrestling with the negativity of human behavior. That can be a very powerful thing that has a
Hmm.
trickle down effect on many people. And so yeah, I just love it. I love that emphasis on relationships and others and caring for others. So,
Yeah.
because even in ancient Greek philosophy, which is supposedly a foundation of Western civilization, at least some aspect of it, you know, the idea of living a life well lived, the eudaimonia, was essentially cultivating moral excellence, and that
Hmm.
sounds like that's what you're talking about,
I hope so.
ultimately. So I know that your grandmother was an influence for you. Can you share a little bit about why that is so important? Where did this come from? Can you give us some historical context, if you don't mind, about how you
Yeah.
came to see things this way?
Well, I was lucky. I grew up in a four-generational household. So not only with my grandmother, but also with my great grandmother, who lived to be into her late 90s, and I was 19 when she passed away. And so I really had this amazing influence of these older women, in particular role models, although my grandfather lived to be in his 90s as well. But I think the women in my life were the ones that really shaped who I became. And I think that when you grow up with older adults in your life, you just have a different view, a different outlook. And I really, I understand that there's not everybody has this in their family. I was lucky to have that. And so I've really tried to work within the university system, because that's the educational system that I know, to create intergenerational projects where students and older adults can meet, share some stories, share time together, and grow to understand that really they have far more in common than their differences, and really the only difference is their age. And I feel like, there's a lot of isms like racism and age, but ageism is one of those things that kind of people forget about, and that is certainly something that we have in our society. And the more that we can bring people together, whether it's different races, different religions, different ages, those stereotypes about that ism break down one story and one connection at a time. And I think we need more of that. We need more sharing, more bringing together, more understanding of what we label the other. And ageism is one of those examples of one way that, we can break down those stereotypes, is bringing people together. I also love to bring people together through food, so there's when I have a ladies dinner the first Monday of every month, and I have people from the age of in their 20s to their 90s, and everybody has to eat, and it's a really nice way to bring people together. And we just start gather as friends. It doesn't matter what age we are. And I think that's so important, especially right now.
That's wonderful. So growing up in an environment where you had this spectrum of ages
Hmm.
and people, generations, so different levels of wisdom and life experience all
Yeah.
intermingling together is important. I can see why you would, um, in that context, appreciate relationships and why relationships are so important
Hmm.
because of that. And it continues to influence you and your thinking. Can you tell us? I know you just said a few words about that, but I want to hear a little bit more because I really want. I mean, this really it means so much to me. It's really and really important to me as well. This intergenerational um, connection and
Hmm.
interaction, but also this translation of wisdom. Can you say a little bit more about why you think it's so important? Can you, yeah, I guess elaborate a little bit more. Why you think it's important for these intergenerational interactions?
Well, I think, again, as I said before, it's kind of, if we don't have these intergenerational interactions, it's us versus them instead of the
Mm-hmm.
we. And I think when you have friends from another group, all of a sudden it becomes a we, and we start looking out for each other rather than trying to pit each other against each other. And so I think the pandemic kind of highlighted that because it was, um, older people are the ones that are going to get sick and going to die. And so it actually, I think, exacerbated a little bit of the ageist beliefs that we had. And I think that we need to come out of that shell. We need to start interacting more and finding ways that we can find our common ground, whether it's, like I said, having a meal together, I should back up a bit. The book that I wrote, the second half, is all about amazing organizations around the globe that are doing innovative work connecting generations, whether it's through storytelling or a co-generational housing, or there's one organization that started in Denmark called Cycling Without Age, where they have like a tricycle and one person's biking and the two older adults are in the front, or an intergenerational symphony. I mean, there's so many ways, creative ways, that we can bring generations together for the common good. And I think when it is that we are, I think the projects that work the best is that there is a common thing that we are working toward, whether it's combating climate change or whatever it is. If there is some common goal that we're all working towards, then those are the projects that seem to work the best. So my hope is that, through writing the book and through interviewing all these incredible people that I interviewed that are doing this intergenerational work, that it'll inspire other people to either want to become part of one of those organizations or start their own intergenerational project. And it could be as simple as sitting down to a meal with somebody that's from a different generation than you and just asking questions and getting to know them. It doesn't have to be some massive big project. It can be something that's even one-on-one. I always say, if you want to impact things and make a change, start on a local level, start on a very personal level. The more personal, the more universal it becomes.
Mhm. Yeah, I love it. Excuse me. I know I keep asking that question. I mean, digging deeper into that, and your emphasis on the connection and learning from each other, and realizing that in order for us to solve the various problems or issues or concerns that we're experiencing in the world, it requires us to be in connection with each other, be in relationship with each other,
Yes.
sit down and have conversations with each other. So I want to I want to hone in on an aspect of that, and just see what you have to say. I have my thoughts, but I'm going to try to pull this out of you. Um, so why should it be intergenerational? So okay, for instance, you have people in, let's just focus on the United States just for simplicity's sake. You have someone from the deep south versus someone from the northeast, and versus someone from the
Mhm.
northwest or the southwest. So those are extreme differences, and they're culturally different. They might want to just hang out with themselves, or you have various ethnic groups, they want to just hang out with
Yeah.
themselves. And why not just like the bunch of all of the 20-year-olds or the 30-year-olds hang out? Why we got to have the old folks around? Why why
Well, we
what
learn from
what
each other.
benefit?
So, we create stereotypes about, old people can't learn anything new. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And the other stereotype about young people is, they're in such a rush to get everything done and they don't take their time and they're so whatever. And so I think that when you bring those two groups together, hopefully you end up having the best of both groups. So, you know, in the older group, maybe you have some of the wisdom and the experience. And in the younger group, maybe you have some new and innovative ideas because you haven't been doing things the same way. And to bring the synergy of those two groups together, combined, you come up with something far better than you would if they were separate. And I think that's true of different ethnicities, of different religions, that if we can talk to one another, we learn from each other, and we learn, and hopefully we pull out the best traits from each of those groups and bring them together to come together as something much stronger and much more impactful when we work together rather than as individuals or in our own isolated groups.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know trying to drive home something here. This, and because I think in our culture, yeah, you're right. We have those stereotypes. So young folks, they're too fast. Our older folks, they're too old. They're disconnected from
Mm-hmm.
our experience. They don't understand what we're
Right.
what we're doing. And I'm like, for me, it's like you said, as wisdom and experience. Even if a life that has someone has lived 100 years old, like your grandmother, you may have slightly different values in terms of superficially, mostly, but that person has lived 100 years, has seen a lot, has made a lot of mistakes,
Right.
and there's a lot to learn from folks who've had a life experience. Even if you don't agree with every little detail about their things, you
Mm-hmm.
can still gain insight of why they have that perspective. And sitting down and having a conversation with someone who's older, you might um you might disagree with them on a particular perspective on its surface, but as the conversation unfolds, you get to know a little bit about their history, about their experience, and what led them to see things that way. There's wisdom in that. I think that in that transference of wisdom and dialogue and conversation, there's a lot we as younger adults can learn from. And I personally think that's an issue in our culture. It's probably why I love your documentary so much, is that, this someone really saying that, hey, it's important to listen to our elders, because I think in our current era, things have changed so fast that there is this sense of disconnection
Mm-hmm.
from our elders, and feeling like they don't understand the world that I inhabit, and I don't understand the world that they inhabit. And so therefore, it's pointless to have a conversation with them. No, or they can't teach me something. No, they can really teach us a lot if we're sitting down and being open to hearing what it is that they have to say, even though they may not, say for instance, this is a random example, they might not agree with our ideas around gender or something like that, for instance. Instead of letting that be some divisive thing, actually try to have a conversation with them and see why they see things that way. And I guarantee there are other things in their experience that they can share with you that can be can help you live a better life. And I don't know. I think that saddens me that we live in a culture where ageism is really a big issue, and just unwillingness to extract wisdom from folks who laid the foundation for us, even if some of us disagree with them about certain things.
Yeah, well, I guess I feel very lucky that I was able to spend the time that I did interviewing the people that I, was able to interview for the film, and gain that wisdom and put all my devices away and really put my attention to those elders. And one of the things that I've done is and doing this intergenerational work that I've worked with different universities, is that we are collecting the story of older adults. And on our website, there's a place where it's called Shared Stories, where people can share their stories. But one of the things that in the book, that I talk about the things that I learned from interviewing all those people, because I think there's so much value in taking the time, as you mentioned, and listening to our older adults in our lives. The most important thing is that everyone needs to feel like they have a sense of purpose, no matter what age they are. And I think that that's true whether you're a college student or whether you're in your 80s, 90s, 100, whatever it is. And a lot of times, for many people, that pivotal moment is when they retire from a job, because that used to be their sense of purpose. And, if you introduce yourself, what do? You usually say your profession. And when you don't have that profession to talk about who you are, it's kind of a loss of identity in some ways. So having a sense of purpose, and for many people as they age, giving back is their sense of purpose. Doing something that gives back to the community, I think, is really important. And the second thing that we've kind of touched upon that I really harp on is having this sense of community. So feeling like you are connected to more than just yourself, and you have this bond with other people. It doesn't have to be family, which for me was really a revelation. It could be friends. But everyone that I interviewed in the film had this real sense that they belonged to a community, that they were people they could reach out to if they needed help. And I think the third and the fourth thing kind of go hand in hand, which is resilience and positivity. So, the people that were in the film went through some really traumatic times. A lot of them lived through World War II, which was definitely a very traumatic time. And having that sense of resilience of being able to make it through those times, I know that their stories when we were going through the pandemic and when I've gone through other times have really helped me get through some tough times. Knowing that they could get through it, I think, okay, if they could do it, I can get through this moment. And so there's such a value in listening to those stories and learning from them. And then I think that idea of positivity, the people that I interview, they saw life as a glass is half full rather than half empty, which is such a cliche, but there's a reason it's a cliche, because they definitely lived happier lives as a result of looking at their life as half full rather than half empty. And I'm reminded of Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. One of the people in my film, really, that became a very pivotal book that she read in her 50s. And what she got out of it, and by the way, for those of you that don't know that book, Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, he was a Holocaust survivor. And he writes about being in the camp and not being able to tell who is going to survive based on their physical strength. It was much more about their mental attitude. And my friend Evie, who was in the Lives Will Live film, talked about how her interpretation of that, or what she took into her own life, was that there are so many times in our lives where we cannot control the things that are happening around us. But what we can control is our attitude about how we deal with those things. And I think that's such an important lesson to learn, is that really your attitude is the only thing that you can control. And once you realize that, it opens up the world in a very different way. So those are kind of the things that I learned, that I think that if we have this cross-pollination of ages, we would learn that from each other just organically from being around each other.
Yes, love those. Exactly. I mean, a big one that stands out for me is just, I mean, all of those, but the resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And life can be hard. You go through
Yeah.
I mean, it is hard. 40s, even in your 40s and your later adult life, man, that can get challenging. 50s,
Mm-hmm.
and to have an elder there to be like, you can make it through this. I've gone through hard times in my life, and this is how I was able to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's
Exactly.
something to that. I think there's really something huge. And also this idea of the glass half full.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, not all, of course, some people, get into their late years and still angry and upset and depressed. But a lot of people, and I've seen this, who are depressed most of their lives and then get to the point of like, I'm near my end.
Yeah.
What's really important? And it becomes that glass half full thing.
Mm-hmm.
At least they give lip service to it, and they start to say, this is actually important. Actually, I've lived my
Yeah.
life with the glass half full, half empty, and
Mm-hmm.
now look at where I am.
Yeah, I had that
And
experience with my dad, who had a stroke when he had several strokes, but he had a stroke when he was 69, which left him not able to really walk very well, and his left arm not able to use it that very well. And he was a guitar player and all these other
mm,
archerist and all these things. And he was also a geriatric physician from the time that he graduated from medical school, which was kind of unusual in that era. And then he found himself pretty much in a wheelchair and not able to drive anymore. But still, he practiced until the day he died when he was 79.
Mm,
And he realized that he learned to be grateful for the things he could still do rather than resentful and depressed about the things he couldn't do. And I actually think the last 10 years of his life, he was happier than he was before then, because I think up until that point, the grass was always greener and he was always looking for the next thing. And when he realized that this is where I'm at and this is what I can do, and he was an amazing role model to his patients, because here was this doctor also in a wheelchair after having had a stroke, still practicing. Even in the
mm,
middle of the pandemic, he went into work every day. His wife, my stepmom, drove him to work every day. And, he had to suit up and do the whole thing, but he was there for his patients. And I think that was he was a role model to me and certainly to his patients as well. But again, it was about looking at what he still had left rather than thinking about the things he couldn't do. And let's face it, when we age, we do lose some of our physicality. There are things that we're not going to be able to do, that we lose some physical strength. And so it's really important to learn to embrace what we can do and look at I like to think of things instead of as obstacles as challenges. And again, it's all about semantics and how we frame things. It's sort of like learning that your attitude is really the only thing you can control. The semantics and the way that we talk to ourselves also is a big part of that.
absolutely. Love it. I love that example. Oh, that's just perfect because, yeah, that's it. I think that's what I'm getting that audience to when I talk about this stuff is, and that's why I like to interview people who are older because not everyone has had a stroke and all, but there's something about when those things, those challenges in life happen, they make you stop and reflect, like what's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what elders can teach us from their experience. It's like, hey, I have limitations now. I just want to share with you what I think is really important based on a life of my pursuits and what I thought was important and how my thinking has evolved.
Mm-hmm.
I think listening to someone talk about their personal experience is so powerful, or watching it. That's
Yeah.
why, like you're saying, being around elders, we've kind of lost that a little bit in our culture where we don't spend enough time around elders so we can, like you did, like you just get that wisdom. I did with my grandfather, to kind of get that wisdom that they have to share, just through their experiences and watching them over a lifetime
Mm-hmm.
and seeing the changes and seeing how they're near their end, saying like this is what's really important, and take that and reflect on that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that there's value in that. And I think that can help contribute to, that can help lessen some of the psychological dysfunction or mental disturbances that we see in our culture. Because I think, folks such as your father being able to share their
Mm-hmm.
experience and saying, hey, I'm limited now, and I had to transform my way of thinking. I had to makes me really reflect on my life. How do I look at things now? And I think hearing someone say that, and you're younger and you feel like, oh yeah, I got my whole life ahead of me, but just hearing someone say that is a reminder that look at how you're looking at your life. What is your
Mm-hmm.
attitude, as you say, towards life? You're going to age. You're going to get older. What is it? What is it? What's worth doing? What is a life worthy of living? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to tell you that based on my experiences, these are the things that I've experienced, and this is what I'm experiencing now. And I'm happier. And I've heard this many times, even on this podcast, people have said this. Like, I'm happy. This is, someone had cancer, and they're like, "This is the happiest time of my life. This is the happiest I've ever been in my life." And I'm like, "There's something to that.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about that? We don't need to wait until we get cancer. We don't need to wait until we're 100 years old. What can we learn from our elders, the community members about life in general based on their experience. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I just love it. um, and what can so you're this emphasis on intergenerational
Mhm.
interactions and relationships. Why is that valuable for? Now, I know you say it in general. Why is it? I'm 50 years old. What would I get? I'm just posing a question, folks. So I'm not. This is not just to kind of draw out an answer. Why would I sit down and have a conversation with a 20-year-old? What can a 20-year-old what do we have in common, and what would I even like learn from a 20-year-old that I don't know myself? What would I benefit
You
from
don't know unless you have that conversation,
that?
right?
Exactly.
I mean, what you're going to learn is going to be different than what I'm going to learn. I think it depends on where you find your commonalities, and if you're open to it, I'm sure you will learn things. I think it's just, everybody's experience is going to be really different. But I can assure you that both you and the 20-year-old would walk away from that conversation feeling, different about somebody that was older or younger, depending on your generation. I think that maybe it's that you talk about sports, maybe that it's you talk about AI. Because I'm in the photo world, I talk to 20-year-olds all the time about photography and AI and what it's like now with, what they think of the future and what it's like for them in this moment. And so I think just being open and finding the common ground that you can have the conversation and then learning more about each other. That's what you can hope for.
Mm-hmm. And doesn't that make a better world? It's
I think
everybody.
so.
I don't want to just hang around with a bunch of 50-year-olds. It's great when be around people your age. There's a certain level of comfort,
Hmm.
but it's great what you're saying when we talk amongst ourselves and across generation. It makes the world a better place because we have a better understanding of each other. We find out these common themes, and I'm sure I can something's gonna rub off on
I'm
me from
sure.
them. For example, I work with children, teaching capoeira, this Brazilian dance martial art. Man, they teach me so much.
Hmm.
It's I love children. I don't have any. I guess it's not too late, but I adore being around children. The playfulness they teach me so much. As an educator, they teach me so much. And I know that even just with little children, it's just amazing to be around them and to be reminded of presence. And I think you mentioned this earlier, being open.
Hmm.
Children are wide open, and being around them can remind us to be wide open and to be curious, to be interested in things. I love it. I love it. I really do.
Well, and I think, when I have shown the film Lives Well Lived, people would say, oh, younger generations, they just don't get it. And, the World War II generation, they went through really terrible times. Well, you know what? Young people are going through their own terrible times. I was doing another film called Forever Voters about the League of Women Voters going into high schools and trying to encourage students to register or pre-register to vote. In California, you can pre-register if you're 16. And there was an alarm that went off, and the students a fire alarm. The students didn't know whether to move or not because they were worried it might be a shooter. And that's something that I never grew up with. So maybe they're not going through World War II, but they have their own issues of like, I never thought when I went to school I wasn't going to be safe. And so it's really until we live in somebody else's shoes, until we know somebody else's past or what they're going through in the moment, it's really, it helps us to understand so that we don't make rash judgments about people and about who they are and why they live life in a way that they do. And so I think it's just, we can learn a lot by talking to somebody who's a different age and just understanding more of what they have been through or what they are going through and how they're looking into the future. I think it's really important.
Absolutely. And then that informs how our actions, our behaviors,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
maybe, my choices in the world is not so selfish. And
Hmm.
I take into consideration the impact of my choices. Because I'm in dialogue, I'm in conversation, I can engage with, for instance, say younger people and get a better sense of what they're going through and
Exactly.
what's happening in their lives and thinking about their future.
Mm-hmm.
What choices am I making that's impacting the future generations, for instance? If someone is young, if they're very challenged, or if I see patterns in the society and I'm like, oh, this is not healthy, what can I do in my choices to have an
Mm-hmm.
impact on the world? I think that continuous engagement that you're speaking of informs how I choose to have the good life.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, a lot of my choices is I choose not to do certain things because I think about the future generations. What impact is this going to have on the future generations?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
try to minimize. And I'm not doing this well enough. I don't think, and I got a lot of work to do. But I try to minimize use being wasteful or
Mm-hmm.
using plastics or, for instance, not because of me, but because what it does to the environment for one, and also over time somebody has to stop.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to contribute to a world where I'm at, 50 years, 60 years. I don't know how much longer I got, but I'm gonna be fine, relatively speaking, in terms of climate
Mm-hmm.
and the impacts of that. But am I considering those other lives?
Right.
And if I don't have any relationship with them, I mean, again, I work with very young kids, and I think about them like this adorable child. What kind of world am I going to leave for them? And what choices am I making? If I know better, why would
Mm-hmm.
I choose to do something that I know that's going to create a very unnecessarily challenging environment for these young folks?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is I think is profound, really. When we are in relationship and interactions with each other across generations,
Mm-hmm.
because like you said in the beginning, living well is not just centered around me in some little box all by myself.
Yeah.
um, Living well is dependent upon these various relationships that I have with everyone else, and the choices that I make has an impact,
Mm-hmm.
not just in my lifetime but in lifetimes to come. So can I reflect on that? Can I think about that? And if I don't interact with other people, if I'm just in my own little world, selfish world, and I don't have any kind of relationships with anybody else, I'm going to just do what's good for me. And I'm not going to take into consideration the impact that
Right.
it's going to have on others.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. Because living well, it's not just about us, folks. It's not just about us individually. Can we take into consideration others? And let's keep it real too. We're going to be older at some point. And if we piss off all the young people,
If we're lucky, the
if
one
we're
thing that we
lucky,
all have in common is that we age each and every day. So we will all,
right?
if we're lucky, be older for sure.
Exactly. So am I gonna piss off all the young people and disregard them? And they're like, okay, then let's put all the old people away or something. They have no use anymore for us. We don't need they're not contributing to the production in society. So let's just put them all away. That's going to be us one day. And take that into consideration, even if you're just coming from a selfish perspective.
Hmm.
Think about that. Like, okay, then what kind of world am I going to inhabit? I'm
Hmm.
going to have limitations at some point in my life. And I'm going to be dependent on a large population of people a lot younger than I am. And maybe I should take that into consideration when I engage in my actions and behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any other thoughts you want to say about those first two things that you taught of? I know I talked about resilience and
Hmm.
happiness and attitude, basically. What those first two that slipped my mind that you
Sense of
mentioned?
purpose and community.
Yeah. All right. So
Hmm.
sense of purpose. Can you say a little bit more about the sense of purpose?
Well, I think sense of purpose, I think I said a lot already, but I think it's kind of like this, what do you want to do every day? What do you get up wanting to be part of? How do you show up? How do you give back in some ways? I think that that's our sense of purpose is what are we most excited about giving back to the world every day?
I guess what I'm asking is how do you? I know it's a big question, and I'm not saying you're gonna have the full answer to this, but I just wanted to just get your take on this. How do you find your sense of purpose? How do you know
Well,
that?
I think that you partly you have to find out what you're passionate about, and that's how you can find your sense of purpose. I think figuring out where your passion lies and following that thread, following those threads, figuring out how you can do that, how you can bring that out into the world. That's how you find your sense of purpose. For some people, it ends up being their job. For some people, it ends up being volunteerism. That just really depends on the person, but I think that that's really how you want to find it, is through your passion and your what excites you the most.
See, I love that. So it's passion, what excites you most, but it seems like you're saying it within the context of others again. I love how you just always go to that. You're finding your passion, and how
Hmm.
does that basically relates to your interactions with others in the environment?
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So that's why I'm asking these questions, kind of pointing out or just seeing where your take is, but pointing out that yeah, you can find what your passion is and what you really love to do. But remember, what I'm getting from you is remember that you are in a community of others. Take that into consideration, your interactions with others, how you treat others. Yeah, find your passion, but what does that look like within the context of this picture of being kind? You didn't use these
Hmm.
words, but I like to use this word, being in loving community. That's the context for finding your passion, the context for how you orient your mind, your attitude towards life. Um, yeah, all those things are important. But I love how you couch it within the relationships and interactions with
Hmm.
other people, and not just people in your own age group, but people across generations, not just people in your own social kinds of clique, be it ethnic group or gender or whatever it may, sexual orientation. That's fine to have those little groups, of course, but to really broaden and interact and engage with each other across all these various
Hmm.
uh, subcultures within the larger culture in the United States. For United States, for instance, globally, really, we live in a globalized world now with the internet and stuff like that. So,
Hmm.
yeah. So, can you say a little more about some of the work that you're doing? I know you just mentioned it. You mentioned, I know you did a documentary on food in Japan, right?
Yeah,
Am I
yeah.
saying it
So
right?
if people want to see more of what I'm doing, the best way is to go to my website, which is just skybergmanproductions.com. And I'm working on a number of new films, but what I can say is that all of them have some connection with the intergenerational connection, some way that generations are coming together, whether it's through food or through music, through humor. There's all different sorts of ways that people are coming together. But that's kind of the primary emphasis of any of the work that I'll be doing. Will all showcase intergenerational connections.
Awesome. And really emphasizing that the importance and value of intergenerational interactions
Hmm.
towards a life, a meaningful life, or a life worthy of living. I'm going
Absolutely.
to keep putting that in there. And so you slipped it in around food and
Hmm.
why food isn't so important. Can you say a little bit more about that? Why food and yeah, I'll just let you say. You said some, but I was just kind of seeking to
Yeah,
extract a little
well,
bit
I
more
think,
out of it.
I grew up in my grandmother's kitchen, and I think that when we make food together, that's when the best stories, the best wisdom, and the, knowledge is passed down from one generation to the next. I think everyone can think about something that they grew up with in their childhood around food that just brings back memories, brings back this good moment when you were learning from an elder in your family. And so food has a really powerful way of bringing people together.
Exactly, right?
Hmm.
I love you just keep coming back to togetherness, being together, being in a relationship. That's the whole podcast, everybody. Just be in
Ah,
relationship, be connected with each other.
that's it. It's all about
Yeah.
connection. Well, my
Yeah.
my my partner Jeff calls me the kibbutznik kid, which means, like for those of you that don't know, like kibbutz, everybody works and lives, and it's a very communal thing. And I think that my superpower, everybody has a superpower. My superpower is bringing people together. So whether it's through film, through food, that is one thing that I love doing is being the ultimate connector and bringing people together.
It shines through you. I asked you the question about food. I want to say that too about how it brings people together. But you didn't mention about anything about nutrition and how it affects your body.
No, not at all.
I love it. I love it. I love it. That's been the theme of this conversation is relationships,
Yes.
relationships. I know that this one didn't come up for you. What role does compassion play in all of this?
That is a good question. I think in being compassionate, I think it's about having empathy for another person. And at least that's the way that I look at it. So I think that compassion plays a big part in that, and that you're empathetic to the people that you surround yourself with, and that you understand, maybe allow yourself to understand what they might be going through. That might be a different experience than you're having. And I think that has a lot to do with being compassionate, and that what you might need in a certain situation is not what somebody else needs in a certain situation, that you really have to find out what it is that they want and need in that moment. That's part of being compassionate. I think I see a lot of people who think they're compassionate by doing what they want somebody to do for them, but that's not what that person necessarily wants. So being compassionate is really being empathetic, really listening, and then doing what's right for the person that you're trying to be compassionate toward.
Mm-hmm. No, it just further refines the relatedness and the connection
Hmm.
between each other. Love it, love it, love it. I'm gonna ask you another one. Love. What does love have to do with it?
What's love got to do with it, right?
Right?
I mean, love is everywhere. That's what it's all about. Love is the bottom line for everyone, whether it's a romantic love or a friend love or a parental child love. I think love is at the root of it. That's what we want. Is we all want to feel loved and to give love.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, awesome. And then, so I'm just asking you these questions here to get your thoughts on this, and I think they're all related to relationships and being in community and connection. So I'm just asking those. How about the arts? What value does the art offer to this? These thoughts of yours.
Well, I mean, because of the arts, I can tell these stories and bring them to life. And so for me, the arts have played a huge part in my life, whether it's through music, through photography, through filmmaking. I think we need art to fulfill that void, to show what it's like to live life. That's what we leave behind is through the arts. If you think about historical references, their music, paintings, photographs are all artistic in nature, right? So that's what we leave behind.
Awesome, awesome. So now speaking of leaving behind, this is where I'm going next. So what is your vision of I know it's a big question, but what is your vision for the world in terms of a life worthy of living for all? What would you like to see in the world?
Well, I mean, I think more kindness and more understanding. I think that when I leave this world, I hope that I leave the world with a deeper understanding of the power of storytelling that to connect generations and to enrich our collective human experience. I think if my work in any way can inspire a few people to bridge those gaps and see the world with more empathy and curiosity, then I think I will have left a meaningful contribution.
I love it. You're such a love bug. I love it. That's why I refer to you as I connect with that though. Yeah, you consistently come back to that, and that's just beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a big thing that I'm taking from this conversation, and you're so anchored in community. I think your husband has it down there.
Yes, he does. He knows me well.
Just in this
For
short period of
sure.
time we're interacting with you, I'm like, oh wow, she's really a community person, and everything
Yeah.
keeps coming back to that, and that's so beautiful. And thanks for reminding us of that, reminding us that, hey, be kind. Try to try to understand each other.
Hmm.
Get to understand someone, or if you want to support someone, see what's good for them. It's not just all about you. It's
Yep.
not just about me. It's not about Broderick. It's about my relationships with everybody else.
Hmm.
And I'll throw in this across time. Um, and let's learn from people younger than us, people older than us, and see what wisdom we can extract from everybody. You know, young, like you say, young people have a lot to teach us and share and help us navigate the world, and older folks have a lot more experience, and they have something that can contribute to this, making the world a beautiful place, of human interaction and relationships.
Hmm.
This is this has been awesome,
Yes, thank you
Sky.
very much. This has been great.
Yeah, this has been great. I know I kept trying to pull things out of you, asking you questions. Again, I want to go a little deeper and tell us a little bit more. And I really enjoy, the work I really believe in the work that you're doing. It's really
Thank you.
important. And now just having this conversation with you and seeing like, oh wow, this is a very, this is genuine for you.
Hmm.
It just kind of comes out of you, this desire. Well, a desire to, again, I use my language here, to create loving community,
Hmm.
and to really encourage us to be in relationships with each other. And your whole like shtick, man, just that's real. It's not like
It's
not a
not a
promotional
shtick.
thing. I know. I'm just, it's not a shtick, but I'm like, it's not your whole life, your whole. It's not like a marketing strategy. Like, no, this is real. Like, I'm
Hmm.
really interested in positive, loving community, and that's really beautiful, really beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I was being funny about a shtick. I know it's not a
I
shtick,
know, it's
but
okay.
but yeah, are there any final words that you would like to share? Anything about um
No, I just think,
uh,
if people want to reach out to me, they can go to my website, which is skybergmanproductions.com, and I'm very accessible. You can see all the projects that I'm working on there, but I love hearing from people, and I do actually email everybody back that reaches out to me. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been really just a great hour. I really appreciate it.
yeah, I really thoroughly appreciate this conversation. You got me over here just thinking and smiling. I'm just smiling the whole time because, yeah, you're a fellow lovebird. Am I saying that right? Lovebird. Yeah. Because I'm all about it. I'm all about like being in loving community, and it's good to know that you're out there and in the projects that you're engaged in, actually, putting content out there in the world that encourages us to do this.
Yeah,
This has been wonderful. I hope we do something like this again, or
me
interact in
too.
some capacity again. And take care, and looking forward to next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I hope this conversation has inspired you to reflect on your own views of the good life. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more inspiring and thought-provoking conversations, please follow, write a review, and rate us on your favorite podcast app. If you are tuning in on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated.